This is a single sword class from Sword Night Bootcamp 2024 in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm excited to finally be bringing you this video. Short sword is by far my most favorite style. I really enjoyed attending this class. It reminded me of all I knew and taught me a lot about the nuances that I had overlooked over the years. In this video, you'll be learning two basic guards, the inside denial guard and the outside denial guard. Learning the guard positions only takes a few minutes, but learning how to use them can take a lot longer. The instructors go into the details about many of the nuances associated with the two guards, including how to use them to manipulate your opponent. The video is shorter than most of my other foam fighting instructional videos. It ended up being recorded in 3 parts, and this first part consists of the main lecture and a hands-on exercise. The last 2 parts were best broken down into smaller nuggets of wisdom and released separately, which I will get to at a later time. Before getting to the class, I would like to take a moment to thank all of my community members. If it were not for their generosity, I would not have been able to make this trip to SKBC. I also run a LARP blogging website and a Discord server. If YouTube just isn't enough Belegarth content for you, consider checking them out. I even have a blog about going to the SKBC 2024. Links in the description below. And as always, stay inspired, stay excited, and keep fighting.
I don't want to speak for everyone, but we obviously believe that single is a foundation to other styles, right? And so it's really important that, when we look at this style of fighting, sometimes it can be really a lot to soak in at one time, right? There's feet movement, there's what your hands and your sword are doing, right? And then there's a mental approach to that aspect. And so what we want to do today is just look at a piece of that, right? And so what we're going to focus on is what our hand is doing and using or exploiting those different types of guards that Peter talked about, diving into them a little bit so that we understand them, right? And then we're going to show you how you can use those things to give you some more options and to help develop your toolbox a little bit. So as we go over 1 or 2, we're going to break out and then we're going to try those things on each other. So we'll have some opportunity to practice. So as Peter described, no matter what hand your sword is in, right, there is an inside and an outside lane. So if I fight right-handed, anything from the weapon to my body is considered the inside lane. And anything from the weapon away from my body is considered outside, right? Some fun ways that we can maybe help understand those things is, has anybody ever heard the term, like, it's cold outside, right?
Yeah.
Well, that means the further away you get from your body or this engine, right, the heat of yourself, it's colder, right? So think of inside warm, outside cold, maybe, right? But as we look at these guards, we're trying to force our opponent to pick one. We're either going to look to have them throw at our inside lane or maybe throw at our outside lane. So understanding that concept is important. So for me, when I walk into a fight with somebody, single sword, I like to use my guard to try to help elicit a certain response. Okay? So the first guard that I want to go over is what we're going to call the inside denial. So we remember, if I'm right-handed, this is my inside, this side is my outside, right? So if I want to deny somebody the inside, I'm going to tilt my sword towards the inside, right? It can be out in a range, it can be closer, right? We can play with those options. But this says what to an opponent? It says, hey, I would really like for you to throw outside. Or for what reason do you think we might present that guard? Well, this whole game is like based off of not necessarily always killing someone, but the most important thing is what?
Not dying.
Not dying, right?
If you don't die.
So these parts make you dead real fast. Extremities, you can maybe be alive for a little longer, right? So inside denial hopefully keeps our body safe, right? We're going to force them to throw outside. And then the opposite of that would be what type of guard? Outside denial, right? So if we now move our hand and our sword to block the outside lane, we're allowing somebody access to the inside. So why do we maybe want to do this? So if me and Gus are lined up and we're about to fight each other, right? One of the first things that I want to do is want to look at Gus's guard. Well, What he's showing me right now is he'd really like for me to hit outside, right? This is in the way of the inside lane, right? So when we walk into a fight, we want to try to give our opponent the idea of where they should maybe throw. So if we're fighting and I decide to throw out here, right? What have I effectively done or shown Gus with this response? But I'm also inviting him back to the outside. So here comes the options part that you guys were looking for. We have these two basic guards, inside and outside denial. Let's say me and Gus are sparring each other, and I find that he dominates the outside. No matter what I do when we reset, and I keep showing him this inside denial, I can't block this outside shot, right? The options part is instead of continuing to fight the same way, I'm going to switch my guard. Does that make sense? So now I'm saying, I don't like the fact that you throw outside. And you're really good at it, by the way, because you've killed me or taken my arm or whatever. And so now I want to change how the fight goes. So now I say, I'm going to stop you for a second from throwing outside. Please throw inside. It's risky, right? Because all of these things are closer to the body, but we go into that situation understanding it.
One thing I'll add about guards is it's important to think about your guard, and a good way of doing this is to look at yourself in the mirror. You want to find a balance of where you're optimizing and getting the most coverage of yourself without limiting your options. One of you, when you jumped into your stance earlier, your arm is fully extended. What do you think would be an issue with this? Yeah, my sword is farther away from me, right? I can block better. I've got more options, more defense.
You have to load up.
Yeah,
right?
I have to bring my arm back before I can throw an attack. It's about finding this balance of what's comfortable to give me coverage in terms of blocking and options. So by doing this inside denial, I'm exposing this, but I'm covering a lot of my other body. So I sacrifice defense here to gain defense here, but I bring my arm close enough that I have the ability to respond without having to bring my arm back before I can attack.
So in your stance, and you're all denying the inside lane, right? I want all of you to now switch to an outside denial. When you guys normally fight, does this feel awkward? You feel very exposed, right? And to Gus's point, this is something that I wanted to bring up, right? Because a lot of us are really good at inside denial, right? Because it feels safer. And we want to force the outside movement. But if we go to inside denial, the reason why I find that it's an awkward thing is because what happens if you're denying the outside and you're exposing this, what a lot of people do is that when a shot comes in, they suck their hand close to their body. And what does that do for us? So if I'm fighting Gus and I'm denying the outside, right? And I bring my block closer to my body, it allows Gus to hit me, right? Because I'm not really blocking anymore. Or if I do get a block and he steps and throws, he has a lot more access to my body. So to bring Gus's point back in, if I'm going to deny the outside, I have to be okay with my guard being more projected. Because what I want to do is when the shot comes in, I want to move my hand as little as possible to block the sword from actually hitting my body. So again, there's a little bit more to this. We're not going into it too in depth, but we have to maintain range at the same time, right? We can't just stay here. Because again, if Gus moves in, even if I move it a little bit, the shot can come further, right? So I need to maintain that. But if I suck my hand in, I'm effectively giving him more access to the inside, right? So we have to understand that to get more comfortable with allowing people to throw at our body.
Something like hand locking would come in that case?
Could, yes. But it still can be a bad habit. Because if you're doing this, like you're sucking this in and potentially giving up your hand, well, you're just giving up your hand. And you're losing a limb when you don't have to. If we were to be out a little further and cut off the angle, we can keep our free shield for another time. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But you could make up the space with a hand block. The big thing, again, you just want to focus on is this hand and where it is in space in front of you. We want to try to keep it in a loaded position so that we can strike, but we don't want it too close to our body to invite people to get closer to us. Does that help answer it? How you do it? Gosh, body mechanics are great, right? So if you can do it with your hips and not have your hand bouncing all over the place, better, for sure. You're onto that. So what I want to do is I kind of want to pair up, and what I want you to do is each person gets some time with the other, practicing inside and outside denial. Now here's the trick to this drill, is you gotta give your partner a little bit of grace because we all know what's going on, right? So if I'm gonna work with Gus, right? He's gonna pick his guard, and I'm going to just allow him to feel what that does, right? And then I want him to switch guards, maybe a couple fights in or just some simple block strike so that he can get familiar with moving his hand in space, right? Instead of trying to do this motion to block on that outside denial. Does that make sense? So switch off with each other, throw some shots. It doesn't have to be a full spar. We're going to do some of that. But this one, stay sword length away from each other, play with those guards, and feel the difference between those two.
What I recommend when you start off is figure out the ideal placement for your hand. So what I'm going to do is, without you going into your guard, I'm going to put my sword on there and then allow him to move his sword or move your hand until you get to a point where you have that comfortable, like, I can block without having to move my hand. That's a good starting point. If you have no idea where to start, that's a good way of figuring out how to start for both, outside and then on the inside too. If they're able to hit you, you can now kind of get an idea of like, where should I put my hand? Where should my hand be that I don't ever have to move it to cover that part?
Hey, one thing I want to point out real quick is when you guys do inside denial, your opponent's not always going for your hand. They may go for offside body. Okay, so it's really important if you're showing an outside denial, right? Sorry, an outside denial, and you're inviting someone to the inside, the shot isn't always here, right? Sometimes that shot is right here. So that's why this hand placement is important. Does that make sense? That's what we're trying to kind of feel comfortable with, right? If we don't love exposing our inside lane, yes, there are shots that can happen at this arm, but there is also this very real possibility that cross body happens, right? So play with that when you guys are working with each other. So basically all I want to do right now is just get comfortable with, having somebody throw while you hold this guard, right? And you can respond and we can kind of block strike if you'd like, right? But it's more just getting a good understanding of where this hand needs to be so that you can attack, but also keep this thing safe, right? So if I throw like a wrap, it changes the equation a little bit, right? And same goes for you. If you end up throwing a wrap, boom, I need to move this hand, right? So feel comfortable, throw. And again, because we're showing an inside denial, we are hoping that the first attack from our opponent comes to the outside.
Yeah, we want that. Yes, we bring in the force.
Right. So if you switch to inside denial, right, we have to get comfortable with the fact that this can happen, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So this denial when they come.
Yeah. There it is. What are some things that you guys noticed?
I mean, it's just a good starting point. It's a good place for you to, we line up to fight. this is where I go to. This is, if I want to fight, you know, I'm going to go here. If I want to be goofy and I want to like really focus on something, maybe I'll do the outside denial and get them to come inside so I can work on something specific. But it's comfortable. It's, you know, not stressing any muscles. I'm not tensed up. I'm not, you know, like I'm curling up like some irons. I'm just relaxed. And it's a natural and comfortable position for me.
What about y'all? What did you notice?
Doing it nice and slow, I could see, even when I was just watching, I could see where they could go next.
Yeah.
Like when coming to here, I could see like the belly slash opening.
Yeah.
Because they're already blocked out here, or just straight to the arm.
Yeah.
Inside denial, I'm able to be much more square with my body. I'm safe. As soon as I go to outside denial, I better be edge on.
Yeah.
Because if you're square at all, it's
Oh yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean. So like it was just like a. I was like, oh,
One thing to highlight with all of this is not only does this all apply to single sword, this is our basically our fundamental style. Everything else is going to build off your single sword. Doing Florentine, you have 2 swords. Basically, everything you learn for single is going to apply because you're going to use it. Sword and board, you're still going to be using it. So these guards can also be applied to those styles too.
So, you know, without a shield, you know, we have our inside denial guard, and we have this outside denial guard, right? And the reason why these things are important to understand just in a single sword environment is because now when you add a board to this mix, right, I can still invite my opponent to throw in a certain location based off of those 2 guards, right? So I have a shield, and if I deny my outside lane, where would you throw, or would you think you would throw at this guard? Yeah, the slot that I've created for you, right? Here's my arm, right? If I denied the inside, even though I really don't have to, right? Because I got this thing. But if I move to an inside denial, I'm telling you even more to throw. Where?
Sword.
Right? There's a shield and now a sword over here. I really don't think you should throw here. So I'm inviting you this way, right? So to go back to this options, having options, right? It's really imperative that while you're fighting, whether it's single sword or sword and board, you have to take a second to make the decision to change, right? If you're comfortable with inside denial, but it doesn't seem like the fights are going the way that you would like them to go, you have to make the conscious effort to change the guard, to see if it's something that might go differently, right? Again, getting beat, my arm keeps getting hit, they hit here, whatever, or I'm moving too much because of a feint or a fake, right? Switch the guard. See what those next couple fights look like and see what you can make adjustments to. Does that make sense? So now instead of just having an option to throw like a chop or a slash or a wrap, well, now we're creating options just based off of these guards, right? You're inviting an opponent to think that they should throw their weapon at a certain place. It's a little deeper than just a different type of a chop or a different type of a wrap, right? Or how we move our feet and engage an opponent. It's even more down to just how we hold our hand and how we hold our sword. Quickly, I just want to touch on the other 2 guards that Peter talked about, right? So he called them bait guards, right? Where you can separate your body essentially in a top quadrant or a bottom quadrant, right? If I hold my sword high in this fashion, I invite somebody to do what? Low. Yeah. If I move this sword down, I invite the opposite, right? I invite somebody to throw high, right? Does that make sense?